Hi everyone, my name's DIABETOR, and today I'm going to show you 3 more builds that were requested by viewers. If you have any build requests, let me know down in the comments and I'll add them to my list. And if you find this helpful, please leave a like, share the video, and consider subscribing. It really helps me out. Each of these builds will be at level 125 using the Wretch as the starting class. These are just my personal preferences, and you can make these builds at any level you want using any starting class. I'll put the most optimal class for each build on screen in case you're making them from scratch, but any class will work for all of them. Number 1. The Buffable Nagakiba build. The viewer who requested this build wanted to be able to use the Nagakiba with a variety of weapon buff spells like Black Flame Blade, Blood Flame Blade, and Electrify Armament. It turned out to be a really simple build, but also really strong and fun to use. For stats, we've got 60 Vigor, because Vigor is always the most important stat, 14 Mind, because we're going to need it to cast the weapon buff spells, 20 Endurance to medium roll with our gear, 18 Strength so we can wield the Nagakiba one-handed, 25 Faith for the buff spells and a couple passive buffs, and then I dumped every remaining point into Dex, which brought it up to 47. The Nagakiba performs best on Dex builds, so that's going to be our primary damage stat. Our weapons loadout is going to be pretty simple. First, we've got the Nagakiba with the Keen Affinity and the Spinning Slash Ash of War. The Keen Affinity improves the Naga's dex scaling and still allows you to buff it with spells and greases. Spinning Slash is a really strong Ash of War, but if you want something different, then basically anything will work as long as you're comfortable using it. Other good options include Piercing Fang, Unsheath, and Stormblade. Our other weapon is going to be a Finger Seal, which I chose specifically because it gets the best incant scaling with our current stats. The weapon buff spells scale their damage based on the incant scaling of the seal you use to cast it, and at 25 Faith, the Finger Seal gets the best incant scaling, so that's what I used. For Talismans, we've got the Shard of Alexander to improve Ash of War damage by 15%, the Two-Handed Sword Talisman to improve two-handed attacks by 15%, keep in mind though that this does not include Ashes of War, Millicent's Prosthesis for plus 5 dex to improve our damage, and more importantly, its multi-hit buff, which makes you do more damage when you land several hits in a short period, and the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, which increases our physical negation by 20%, thus making us a lot tankier. If you don't have the DLC, then you can swap the Two-Handed Sword Talisman out for something like Lord of Blood's Exaltation, Rotten Winged Sword Insignia, or the basic Winged Sword Insignia if you don't have the Rotten one, or Ritual Sword Talisman. For armor, we're wearing the full Rakshasa set. This provides good poise and decent protection, and every piece of the set increases all damage you do by 2% for a total of about 8% more damage. You could swap the helm to the White Mask for its 10% damage buff after making an enemy bleed, but I didn't use it because it's ugly as hell. If you don't have the DLC, then you can use the Knight set from the Round Table Hold, which provides similar poise and better protection at the cost of not having the damage bonus. Or alternatively, just wear whatever you think looks cool as long as you're in medium equip load. For spells, we've got Black Flame Blade, Blood Flame Blade, and Electrify Armament. These are weapon buffs which do a few different things for your weapon. Black Flame Blade adds some fire damage and the Black Flame effect to your weapon, which does damage over time. What makes it really strong is that the damage over time is done as a percentage of the enemy's max health, meaning that tankier enemies take more damage from it than weaker ones, making it great for killing meaty enemies like the Fire Giant. Blood Flame Blade adds less fire damage to your weapon, but will make your attacks do 40 bleed buildup over the course of 2 seconds, making it much easier to proc bleeds on enemies even when they run away from you. Finally, Electrify Armament adds a bunch of lightning damage to your weapon and looks sick as fuck, which is great for making your attacks just straight up stronger. In addition to those, we've got Blessing's Boon for health regen over time, Golden Vow to improve all damage we do by 15% and reduce all damage we take by 10% for 80 seconds, Flame Grant Me Strength to increase our physical and fire damage by 20% for 30 seconds, and Flame Cleanse Me to cure poison or rot in case we run into those effects, which is just nice to have. Finally, in our Wondrous Physic, we've got the Opaline Hearts here to increase all our damage negations by 15% for 3 minutes, and the Thorny Crack tier, which provides a multi-hit buff like Millicent's Prosthesis, but stronger. With all of these buffs combined, we'll have a build that can do a ton of damage with multiple damage types, making it great for fighting varied groups of enemies. Make sure you use the right tool for the job based on who you're fighting. Black Flame Blade is great against really tanky enemies. Just keep an eye on it because it only lasts about 7 seconds before you need to reapply it. Bloodfiend is great for enemies that can bleed or which are weak to bleed. It doesn't add much fire damage to the weapon, but that can be helpful too depending on who you're fighting. Electrify Armament adds a bunch of lightning damage to the weapon, making it great for fighting enemies weak to lightning or standing in rain or water, because that'll make them take more lightning damage. Number 2, the Bloodfiend's Arm. This viewer wanted the strongest Bloodfiend's Arm build, and of course that means we're going to go for bleed. The BFA does no bleed buildup by default, so we need to use the blood affinity for this purpose, and the blood BFA wants about equal strength and arcane. For stats, we've got the usual 60 vigor, we have no points in mind because this isn't an FP hungry build, we've got 24 endurance because the BFA is pretty heavy on account of being a colossal weapon, we've got 30 strength and 11 dex for the BFA's dex requirement, and then I dumped every leftover point into arcane for a total of 49 arc. I said it wants about equal strength and arcane, and we're going to be two-handing the BFA, so with 30 strength, that 50% two-handing bonus will bring it up to 45, and so we'll have about equal strength and arcane. For weapons, we've got the Bloodfiend's Arm with either the Royal Knight's Resolve Ash of War for enormous damage per hit, or Cragblade for more consistent damage per second. And we have the Blood Affinity to make it do bleed buildup. We've also got the Dryleaf Arts with the Golden Vow Ash of War. We use the Dryleaf Arts because it's the lightest weapon that can equip Golden Vow, and I figure that if you have access to the Bloodfiend's Arm, then you probably have the DLC, and so have access to the Dryleaf Arts. If not, you can use a dagger instead, but you'll need to take a point out of Arcane and put it into Endurance to make sure you're not in heavy load. For Talismans, we've got the Lord of Blood's Exaltation for its 20% damage buff after proccing a bleed, the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, which improves any regular attacks you do with a weapon as long as you're two-handing it, including light attacks, heavy attacks, and jump attacks. We've got the Axe Talisman, which buffs charged heavy attacks, which are going to be our main attack for this build. And finally, we have the Blade of Mercy for its 20% damage bonus after getting a critical hit on an enemy, which we're going to do a lot because the Bloodfiend's Arm does a ton of poise damage. For armor, we've got the White Mask for its 10% damage bonus after proccing a bleed, and the Knight Armor from the Round Table Hold. I would have used Rakshasa's set, but it's way heavier and wasn't worth putting another dozen points into Endurance for 8% more damage, so I went with the Knight set for its solid protection instead. We've got no spells for this build, but in our Wondrous Physic, we have the Opaline Heart tier to increase our damage negations by 15%, and the Spike Crack tier to further improve our charged heavy attacks, which will stack with the Axe Talisman and the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, resulting in ridiculous charged heavy attack damage. We've also got Boiled Crab as a consumable buff, which increases your physical negation by 20% for 60 seconds. Alternatively, if you have Exalted Flesh, you can boost your physical damage by 20%. Crab and Exalted Flesh don't stack, so choose one or the other based on your own preferences, but if you use the Exalted Flesh, you're going to do some ridiculous damage with this thing. The Bloodfiend's Arm does an obscene 190 bleed buildup per hit with these stats, and as a colossal weapon, it also does a fuckload of damage and poise damage with its charged heavy attacks. Combined with Golden Vow, the Talismans, the Spike Crack tier, and Royal Knight's Resolve, which increases the damage of your next attack by an insane 80%, it'll make your charged heavy attacks splatter basically anything. The unfortunate thing is that you have to use Royal Knight's Resolve after every hit, which makes it a bit of a pain in the ass to use, especially during boss fights. So alternatively, you might use Cragblade, which increases your physical damage by 15% and poise damage by 10% for 60 seconds. This will make it easier to get stance breaks and give you more consistent DPS at the cost of lower damage per hit, but the important thing is that you won't have to reapply it after every hit, which in my opinion makes it much more user-friendly. Try both of them out and see which one you like better, and use the BFA's charged heavy attacks to massacre anything you fight. Number 3, the TwINTblade. For today's final build, the viewer said they wanted to see my take on a TwINTblade build. That was a really good question because I also had no clue what kind of TwINTblade build I'd want to make, but I decided to go with an intelligence build because I wanted an opportunity to make something that looks pretty badass, as seen in this video's thumbnail. For stats, I needed a few extra points to work with for Mind, so I went with only 55 Vigor. It's only 86 fewer hit points than 60 Vigor, so it's whatever. I went with 15 Mind because this build is going to use spells and Ash of War spam a lot, 22 Endurance to facilitate medium rolling with our loadout, 18 Strength and 13 Dex, which will be boosted to 18 with Millicent's Prosthesis, to meet the stats required for the Twin Knight Swords, and then I dumped every remaining point into Intelligence, which brought us up to 61. The sword only requires 16 Strength to wield, but we get slightly more optimal damage going with 18 Strength and 61 Int, so that's what I did. For weapons, we've got the Twin Knight Swords with the Magic Affinity and the Spinning Slash Ash of War. You can probably tell that I really like Spinning Slash, but you've also got a bunch of other options too, like Ice Spear, Piercing Fang, Sword Dance, Double Slash, or whatever else you like. You've also got a Dagger with the Golden Vow Ash of War, and an Academy Glintstone Staff for casting spells. At 61 Intelligence, this staff gets the optimal sorcery scaling, meaning our spells will do the most damage. I could have used Lusat's staff instead, because that gets the highest sorcery scaling, but it's not much of a damage increase, and it comes with the cost of using 50% more FP when casting spells, so it's not really worth it at all. For Talismans, we've got the Magic Scorpion Charm, which increases all magic damage we do by 12% at the cost of reducing our physical negation by 10%. We've got the Shroud of Alexander to boost Spinning Slash by 15%, and we've got the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia and Millicent's Prosthesis for the multi-hit buffs and the +5 dex from the Prosthesis. Spinning Slash hits multiple times in a row, so it'll proc those buffs quickly, as will the Twinblade's light attacks, so they synergize really well with this build. If you don't have the Magic Scorpion Charm, then you can use something like the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, Ritual Sword Talisman, or Dragon Crest Great Shield instead. For armor, I wanted to make some functional drip using the Carrion Knight set. The Carrion Knight set provides decent protection, but only like 46 poise, which is just short of the 51 that actually does anything for you in PvE. So I got a little creative and came up with this loadout using the Carrion Knight armor and helm, Blythe's gauntlets, and the Scaled Greaves. I'm willing to bet this can be optimized a bit further, but it looks good and it provides 51 poise, so I'm satisfied with it. As always, you can switch to something like the Knight set or whatever outfit you think looks cool, as long as you're in medium equip load. I wanted to keep the spell list simple, so we've only got 4 spells. There's Glintstone Icecrag, which provides a good ratio of damage to FP cost and does Frostbite buildup, which is nice. Carrion Slicer, which is basically the best spell in the game, and is great for when you just really want something to die and your other options just aren't quite cutting it. Great Blade Phalanx, which is a spell I've never used before and wanted to try out. Its strength is that the 3 Great Blades it makes will do a little over 10 poise damage each for a total of a little over 30. Combined with Spinning Slash and the 33.5 poise damage it does if you land all 3 hits, and you can get stance breaks pretty quickly, in addition to some good damage. Finally, there's Terra Magica, which creates a circle on the ground that boosts all magic damage you do by 22.5% while you're in it, making your attacks just that much stronger. Finally, for our Wondrous Physic, we've got the Thorny Crack tier for its multi-hit buff, which combined with RWSI and Millicent's Prosthesis will make you do some stupid damage, and the Magic Shred and Crack tier, which buffs all magic damage you do by another 20%. In addition to those buffs, we've also got Boiled Crab to increase our physical negation by 20% for 60 seconds, which makes up for the Magic Scorpion Charm's negation debuff. The Two-Handed Twinblade moveset is stylish as hell and hits multiple times with each attack, making it great at building up those multi-hit buffs. Keep up the pressure and you'll start seeing some ridiculous damage numbers. Blast bosses with Spinning Slash or your preferred Ash of War, and they'll die fast as hell. If something is giving you a hard time, you can always rely on Carrion Slicer to just vaporize shit. And if you really want to kill something, hit it with Glintstone Icecrag first to proc Frostbite on it, because frostbitten enemies take 20% more damage, meaning they'll melt under the onslaught of glint blades and spinning slashes you're going to hit them with. That's it for today's builds, and if you've made it this far, then thanks for watching. I'm working on a comprehensive Night Rain guide, and I've got other Elden Ring builds and Night Rain videos in the works, so subscribe if you want to see all that stuff. If you have any build or video requests you want to see me do, then comment them down below, and I'll add them to my list. My name is DIABETOR, and I will catch you later.